Have you applied for any jobs in the last, say, 6 months?
Before you answer that, Luke, just lean a little bit towards your microphone so we can
do this.
Hear
tilt it towards you. Yeah, trying to.
Exactly. Just damage it. It doesn't matter. They got another one.
A couple of things have come away, Dara.
Right.
Obviously, I've been busy with a couple of other projects that involves football in terms of acquisitions, and that's just still going along nicely. But we should get to see the results of that in the next 3-4 weeks, hopefully. Right. And I'll either be cracking on with that or getting the CV back out.
Yeah, but it's like, Baz was saying to me the other day, he was like, he's dealt with a couple of like 26-year-old directors of football this summer, which has done his head in. Not because he's worried about young people taking his job, because he's good at what he does, but because they were clueless.
Yeah.
Like there was one in particular who was insulting him every day with some of the bids being made for our player.
Yeah.
And Barry was saying to him, what planet are you on? Like, we don't take offers like that for our player. We were getting offered millions by someone else, and this guy was offering hundreds of thousands. And it was like, he didn't seem to understand. So Barry went to meet him out of respect.
Yeah.
And he met with him, and the guy again, and Barry just came away and he's like, well, what's going on with clubs hiring? They're either young or they're foreign, and they don't know what's going on within the game. It's changing.
It's learning your trade, Darren. It's knowing the game and having an understanding. And I think sometimes if you get to the opportunity of becoming a sporting technical director, director of football, whatever title the club gives you, personally, I went through the scouting route to get there.
Correct, the right way. But you know what they're hiring now? Analysts. They're not hiring scouts. A lot of these clubs now are hiring young. I said to Baz, look, what they're doing is it's groovy. They're going out and hiring 25 to 30-year-old ex-analysts and turning them into directors of football because they've done a couple of courses, but they've got no experience, like you just said. They haven't gone out and done the hard yards.
But it's also, you're right with the analyst thing, but it's also an analyst that's coming from a Man City. And what they're looking at is they're seeing the Man City badge on their CV and things like that. So, listen, it's different people coming to different roles. We understand that. But, you've got to have an understanding. You've got to know how the market works. You've got to have respect for people. You've got to, if you're offering money, there is also a thing, don't insult people. Which you just mentioned, and that comes with, if you've done the hard yard, you've been out there watching games, you get to a level of recruitment within a club that then makes you deal with agents. You have an understanding, you start to have a valuation of what clubs can spend what, and it sort of leads you on the way.
And also know who you're buying from.
Yeah.
If you're trying to buy a player from a club, well, they usually get very good fees for their players. If
you're buying a player from Barry or Tara, you don't even mention hundreds of thousands.
No, but that's my point. Like, it's kind of like, what are you doing? Like, I understand we all start somewhere, and you have to start somewhere. So what you always do is you always check the temperature in the room. So if I know a club has, say, maybe a volcanic chairman like myself, I wouldn't go in with an insulting bid because I know what he'd be like. I go in with a respectful bid and then build from there. But this blew like Baz's mind this summer. And then trying to deal with the guy couldn't see sense. He couldn't quite understand why we wouldn't take hundreds of thousands for a player we'd already been offered millions for.
The other thing, is if you're new to it, which there will be people new to it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And you don't have quite an understanding, then do a little bit of research. So if it's a player at Peterborough, and especially if it's an attacking player, just have a look and go, right, Tony, Dwight Gale, Mikael Smith, George Boyd, whatever, and go, right, all those players went for a lot of money. I'm also looking at an attacking player at Peterborough, so it's probably going to go for reasonable money.
Yes, so seven figures and lots.
So
absolutely.
If you're not quite sure, have a little look, Or I always think, if you're a sporting director at a club and you're inexperienced, you must have a CEO above you that is experienced and say, I'm thinking about this player at Peterborough, what do you think?
Right. Talk to someone.
Yeah.
This guy didn't. He was basically doing it all himself.
Back to communication again.
Yeah, but talk to someone like, if say in the future, Baz is 105 and he decides to retire.
He won't.
And he won't. I straight away wouldn't replace him with a new director of football. I would bring someone in under my wing for at least 12 months and teach them the ropes, do it myself. And then make them the director of football. But long may he continue, do you know what I mean? But that's what I do, because I wouldn't want to throw them into that straight away. And it's like,
Luke, I did see a quote from you recently where you said the three hardest clubs to deal with are Peterborough, Watford and Spurs, which is my club. And I do like to hear these stories about Daniel Levy. So can you just give us a further indication of how tricky he is to negotiate with on a regular basis?
I did mention those three clubs the last time I was in with Darren and Jim. And with those clubs especially, they are going to get and fight to get what they feel their players worth. Now, that doesn't mean that other clubs don't, but the conversation with other clubs can be a little bit easier, let's just say, and a little bit calmer and things like that. So I think I mentioned before, we signed Etienne Capoue from Spurs when I was at Watford, and the quote that Daniel come out with, which I repeated, he said, "I've got something that you want, so you pay what I'm looking for."
Makes sense.
And it sort of ends it. That ends the conversation.
Of course.
So you either say, "Okay, we're going to get close to what you want," or we'll give you what you want, or you walk away.
Do you respect that, or do you think, "Oh no, I wish we could deal with this in a slightly easier way"?
No, I do respect it because there's no hiding. There's no rubbish spoken. It's face to face. This is where we're at, and he gives you if it's a figure, he gives you different ways of how you can get to that figure. It hasn't got to be one payment. This, so he has an understanding that not every club is Tottenham. Not every club has the finances of Tottenham.
Yep.
And I found him sitting in the meeting that I was with, talking about Etienne Capoue. I thought he was very, very good, very, very sharp, but also quite fair.
Yeah, I mean, there are too many people in football that, again, hold grudges when you have a row about a transfer.
Yeah.
Like, I've dealt with loads of people, as has Baz, and you might have a row one day and the next day you're fine.
Yeah.
Me and you might row, you're working at a club you're going, F off down, I'm paying that. And I'll be like, well, no, you're not going to. But the next day we're fine.
Yeah.
But too many people, new people in the game now, they take a grudge.
Yeah.
They don't want to deal with you again, vice versa.
Yeah.
There's only 72 clubs in our league.
Yeah.
We all have to live within this bowl together.
Yeah.
And I said this once to a guy I was buying a player off. He was the CEO, and he was so disrespectful, he wouldn't even answer an email or a call for me. And in the end, what I said to him was, I said, listen, bud, I don't care if you're at a bigger club. You're an employee. Show some respect. I'm an owner.
Yeah.
There's 72 of us here. And let me just say this to you, son. Down the line, when you lose your job, which inevitably you will, you might need another job in football. There's only 72 clubs you can ask for a job in.
Yeah.
Don't go taking one off the list.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the truth, right?
I can see why Peterborough are one of the 3 hardest clubs that you
but
have
also,
to deal
we need
with.
to, people need to
Fair,
realise when you're
fair.
buying something, it's a negotiation. And negotiations go
Correct.
backwards and forwards.
And I love that.
And that's what it is. It's part and parcel. And do you know what? If you're a young sporting director, if you're a young CEO, or even if you're an experienced one, there's nothing better than going face-to-face, meeting with the opposite club who's making that decision, whether it's the owner, CEO,
Absolutely.
chairman, whatever it may be. Because you know what? You come out, and once it's done, you shake hands, you then start talking about other things, and you actually learn something.
Yeah.
100%.
What about the relationship within your own club? I mean, this week we've heard stories from Newcastle that Eddie Howe's maybe a little uncomfortable about Paul Mitchell's arrival. It's changed his responsibilities, etc., etc. I guess there are always inner political battles taking place at clubs.
I don't think it's as much as having those political battles inside. I think it's the perception of what the sporting director is potentially to the outside, and there's still an opinion that the sporting director signs the players, and the manager's turning up for training and he's got a new player there, and that's as far from the truth as you can imagine. What I think it is everyone's involved. From my experience, everyone gets involved in the player signing. And, as a sporting director, as a scouting department, it's our jobs to create a list of players in each position, which we will then present to the manager. And if he wants to have his staff involved as well, he will do. And if there's anyone on that list that he particularly doesn't like, and he's got the right reasons, then we will take it off the list. And if there's someone that he wants to put on a list that we feel is good enough, old enough, right age, fees, etc., then we'll add that to the list. And I think it's having that understanding that we're then going to go and sign the best player we can, for the club that comes in within our budget, etc., etc. Because we always need to go back to the manager picks the team. So until the day that the sporting director picks the team, the manager has to be involved in the signings.
And trust is a big part, because I've always said this, a manager and a director of football, technical director, have to be close, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's a bit like in the NFL, the GM and the head coach. GM does all the drafting, the picking, gives the head coach what he needs, but they have to be like that. And if they're not like that, it's not going to last long. So I would say to anyone who's a director of football, a manager, football manager, this is the modern way now. Get in with the technical director, or vice versa. Because the other thing there is, Luke, that if you work with a manager and you do bring him a couple of talents that come off, the trust builds. So next time you say to him, got to write back to you, he's coming on Monday, he won't even ask. He'll know exactly the type of player you're bringing in, because there's trust there, mutual trust.
But it also comes down to, we just touched on experience for sporting directors and etc. That comes down to experience for managers. So my last manager that I worked with at West Brom was Sam Allardyce, that come in just before the Christmas of the year was in the Premier League. Experience, everyone know what Sam's like him, what he's done. He's a great guy, big character. And we had a January transfer window, and that was important because we were looking to sign 2 or 3 players to try and help us stay up. Ultimately we didn't, but his experience for someone like me to work was phenomenal, because he's on top of me every day about where the players are, but it didn't leave the building. He never put pressure on us through the press.
Yeah.
And that, in my opinion, is a great experienced manager to work with. I think we see more and more now managers that are putting pressure on the club that employ them to go and get a player over the line. We all know it's pre-season now. We all know the transfer window's open. We all know managers want every single player they're going to sign for the first day of pre-season. Yeah. We understand that. The reality is that doesn't happen. And I don't like it, and I don't think it's very smart. Correct. I don't think it looks very good on a club when the manager is putting pressure on the people to go and get those players.
You want the sack from me, questioning me in the press regards recruitment and players.
Yeah. Well, you were saying yesterday, Darryl, one of your big hates is the manager as, I need a centre forward, I need a midfielder, I need a defender, etc., etc. But there must be times, Luke, when a player comes in who the manager doesn't really want. And again, I look back at Spurs, and Jed Spence was signed, and then he never played, and you got these messages, he wasn't really the manager's choice.
That's Conte, isn't it?
I mean, is he was that an exception to the rule?
No, you do get that does happen. Sorry, at clubs that happened at Watford. Because it's a business for Gino Pozzo with the clubs. He has 2 clubs. He did have 3, and every manager went into Watford had an understanding of that. So that's fine. That's a different animal. When we was at West Brom, every player there was 2 players that we signed that we made the manager aware of. That if he didn't want them, we felt we were going to sign him as a project for the club, but it would not affect anything else we could do in that window. Those 2 players were Chris Willock, that unfortunately understand he didn't get a minute. And we let him go into January, and he nearly cost us the league because he went to Huddersfield and they beat us in the second to last game of the season. And you think, and then unfortunately Brentford slipped up and we got up. And the second one was Cedric Kipre. Wigan were in administration. We took advantage of getting him on a low transfer fee. Slaven wasn't keen because we were in the Premier League at the time, and we just said, Slaven, it won't affect any transfer fees, any other player that we want to get in this window, but we believe Cedric is a long-term player for West Brom because the likelihood is if it's not next season, it could be the season after, we're going to be back in the Championship. Yeah. And, that looks now, I think he was their best player last year. Yeah. Cedric Kipper, one of the best centre-halves in the league. Unfortunately, they've let him go out of contract and he's left. But sometimes that happens. Obviously, Jed Spence was a lot more, but in comparison to Tottenham...
Was Slaven difficult to work with? Be honest.
No, to when he come in, he was.
That's a yes.
No.
Correct.
When he come in, he was a breath of fresh air.
Sure.
And he was exactly what we needed. But towards the end, he became difficult. It's probably the best word. And it started to happen then through the press.
Really?
Putting pressure on us. To get forwards. It was and I don't know. There was something that happened. Everyone noticed a change in Slaven when we started to train again after COVID. He wasn't the same person.
Right.
We couldn't really put our finger on it. Just wasn't the same person. Slaven has got a wonderful aura about him. Right. The players
he lost
and the stuff. And he didn't look the same, didn't feel the same. And I think I'm not just saying it's on results based. If you look at us after COVID, we stumbled across the line.
Sure.
But from the start of the season up till March when COVID hit, it was delight to watch us at times. But there's just something I noticed when we get back training after COVID. It just, I don't know what it was, whether it really affected him, but when he come in, he was exactly what the club needed. We just sacked Darren Moore previous season, who was a West Brom legend, and that was, a horrible decision to make. And Slaven come in, grabbed the place by the scruff of the neck. We signed some really good players. We played some great football, but then there was a slight change, which is a shame. I saw him when he was the Watford manager, and I wish now, when I see him, I'd have said to him, come on, let's go back to that stage. What did something change? What happened? But he's a good guy. He's obviously over in Saudi now. Yeah. He's a very, very well educated.
Oh, is he taking the Saudi dollars? Is he? I didn't realise he was out there. He's out there. Fair play to him. I like the West Brom manager now, the moment Carlos. We played them last week. Very good guy, good coach.
Yeah. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app, and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.